Hi, Reddit. I'm in a really tough situation and could use some advice. Sorry in advance for the long post, but there's a lot to unpack here. I met my husband Mark 5 years ago through mutual friends at a local art gallery opening. We were both there to support our friend Lisa, who was showcasing her paintings. I remember being struck by Mark's enthusiasm for the artwork. He had this infectious energy and a way of describing the pieces that made them come alive. We ended up talking for hours that night, long after most of the other guests had left. Mark and I hit it off right away. He was charming, funny, and we seemed to have a lot in common. We both loved hiking and spending time outdoors. We shared a passion for trying new restaurants and experimenting with cooking at home. And we could talk for hours about books, movies, and our dreams for the future. Our relationship progressed quickly after that first meeting. We started dating, and it felt like we were always on the same wavelength. Mark was attentive and romantic, always planning thoughtful dates or surprising me with little gifts. I felt like I had finally found my person. After dating for about a year, we got married in a small, intimate ceremony in my parents' backyard. It was a perfect day. The weather was beautiful. We were surrounded by our closest family and friends, and I felt so full of hope for our future together. I thought I had found my soulmate and was so excited to start our life as a married couple. The first couple years of marriage were great. We bought a cute little fixer-upper house and spent weekends painting and renovating together. We adopted a rescue dog named Buddy, who quickly became the center of our world. Mark and I talked about starting a family soon and would stay up late imagining what our kids might be like. Mark was always very affectionate and attentive during this time. He would leave sweet notes in my lunch bag or surprise me with flowers just because. I remember thinking how lucky I was to have found such a loving partner. We had our disagreements, of course, but we always managed to work through them as a team. Things started to change about 2 years ago. Mark got a big promotion at work that came with a lot more responsibility. He started working later hours and seemed stressed all the time. When he was home, he was often distracted and short-tempered. I tried to be understanding, knowing how much pressure he was under at work. I would make his favorite meals or suggest relaxing activities to help him unwind, but it felt like there was a growing distance between us. I started to notice other changes, too. Mark became very protective of his phone, always keeping it face down or taking calls in another room. He was less affectionate and our sex life dwindled. When I asked if everything was okay, he would brush it off and say work was just busy. I wanted to believe him, but I had a nagging feeling that something wasn't right. Then one day, I came home early from work with a migraine. As I walked into our bedroom to lie down, I found Mark hastily shoving clothes into a suitcase. My heart dropped as I asked what was going on. Mark looked like a deer caught in headlights. He sat down heavily on the bed and broke down, confessing that he had reconnected with his ex-girlfriend Sarah. Apparently, they had run into each other at a coffee shop a few months prior. They started talking and realized they still had a strong connection. Mark said he had been confused about his feelings and didn't know how to tell me. He claimed he never meant for things to go this far, but he had realized he still had deep feelings for Sarah and wanted to give their relationship another shot. I was completely blindsided and devastated. Through my tears, I asked how he could do this to me, to us. We had built a life together. We had plans and dreams. How could he throw it all away? Mark just kept saying he was sorry, but that Sarah was the one that got away, and he needed to see if things could work with her. He said he had always wondered, what if, and couldn't pass up this chance to find out. Before I could even process what was happening, Mark grabbed his suitcase and left. Just like that, my world imploded. I collapsed on our bed, sobbing uncontrollably. Buddy came and curled up next to me, sensing my distress. I don't know how long I laid there, feeling like I couldn't breathe. The next few weeks were a blur of grief and confusion. Mark moved in with Sarah right away. He texted me a few times to say he was sorry for hurting me, but that he felt this was the right decision. I was heartbroken and angry. How could he throw away our marriage so easily? How long had he been lying to me, pretending everything was fine while he was secretly seeing Sarah? I leaned heavily on my friends and family during this time. My best friend Emma practically moved in with me for a couple weeks to make sure I was eating and taking care of myself. She would drag me out of bed, force me to shower, and try to distract me with movies or walks with Buddy. My parents were furious at Mark, but so supportive of me. They helped me sort out practical matters like separating our finances and figuring out what to do with the house. Slowly, I started to put the pieces of my life back together. I threw myself into work, taking on extra projects to keep my mind occupied. I picked up some new hobbies like pottery and yoga to fill my evenings. I started seeing a therapist to work through my feelings of betrayal and abandonment. It was a long, painful process, but gradually I began to heal and rediscover who I was as an individual. About 6 months after Mark left, I ran into his brother at the grocery store. It was awkward. We had been close when Mark and I were together, but I hadn't heard from any of his family since he left. His brother hesitantly told me that things hadn't worked out between Mark and Sarah. Apparently, the spark fizzled pretty quickly once the excitement of their reunion wore off. They had been arguing constantly and Mark had moved out. I thanked him for letting me know, but said I had moved on and didn't want any more information about Mark's life. It was strange. Part of me felt a twisted sense of satisfaction knowing their relationship hadn't worked out. But mostly I just felt sad for all the pain and upheaval we had gone through. Fast forward to now, nearly 2 years since Mark left. I've rebuilt my life and am in a much better place emotionally. I sold our house and bought a small condo that feels like my own space. I've made new friends through my hobby groups and feel confident in who I am as a single woman. I'm dating casually, but taking things slow, still working on fully trusting again. Yesterday, out of the blue, I got a text from Mark asking if we could meet up to talk. He said he made a huge mistake leaving me and wants to try to work things out. He claims he's realized I'm the love of his life and he'll do anything to win me back. He mentioned that seeing me recently, which I wasn't aware of, made him realize how much he missed me and our life together. Part of me wants to hear him out. Despite everything, I did love him deeply, and a small part of me still cares for him. We shared so many good memories, and at one point I thought we'd grow old together. But a bigger part is angry that he thinks he can just waltz back into my life after what he did. I've worked so hard to move on and heal. The thought of opening myself up to that pain again is terrifying. I haven't responded to his text yet. I'm not sure what to do. Should I agree to meet with him? Ignore him completely? Tell him in no uncertain terms that we're done for good? I worry that if I see him in person, all those old feelings will come rushing back. But I also wonder if I'll always have a what if in the back of my mind if I don't at least hear what he has to say. I could really use some outside perspectives on this. Has anyone been in a similar situation? How did you handle it? I feel so conflicted and don't want to make a decision I'll regret. Thanks for reading this far. Any advice would be appreciated. Update 1. Thank you all so much for your comments and support on my original post. I really appreciate the thoughtful advice and perspectives. I wanted to give an update on what's happened since then. After a lot of consideration, I decided to meet with Mark. I know many of you advised against it, but I felt I needed closure to fully move on. We agreed to meet at a neutral coffee shop, somewhere public where I felt safe. I made sure to tell Emma where I was going and asked her to check in on me afterwards. The days leading up to the meeting were nerve-wracking. I found myself oscillating between anger, anxiety, and a tiny flicker of hope that I tried hard to squash. The morning of, I spent way too long agonizing over what to wear. I wanted to look good, but not like I was trying too hard. In the end, I settled on a casual outfit that made me feel confident. Seeing Mark again after all this time was strange. He looked older, more worn down than I remembered. There were new lines around his eyes and a weariness to his posture. As soon as I sat down, he launched into an emotional speech about how sorry he was and how much he regretted leaving me. Mark said that his time with Sarah had been a disaster from the start. The fantasy of rekindling their old relationship quickly gave way to the reality of why they had broken up in the first place. They fought constantly and realized they wanted different things in life. He claimed that he thought about me every day and missed the life we had built together. I mostly sat and listened, my emotions swirling. Part of me felt vindicated hearing that things hadn't worked out with Sarah. Another part ached seeing Mark so upset. But mostly I felt a sense of detachment, like I was watching a movie of someone else's life. When he finished, I calmly told him that while I appreciated his apology, I wasn't interested in reconciling. I explained how deeply he had hurt me and that I'd worked hard to move on with my life. His actions had consequences, and he couldn't just undo them because he was having regrets now. I told Mark about the life I had built for myself, my new condo, my promotion at work, the friends I had made. I even mentioned that I had started dating again. It felt important to show him that I was doing well without him. Mark got upset at this point. He started pleading, saying he'd do anything to win me back. He even pulled out a ring and tried to propose right there in the coffee shop. I was mortified and angry that he would try such a grand gesture without any regard for my feelings or the fact that we were in public. I stood up and told him firmly that it was over between us for good. As I was leaving, he grabbed my arm and begged me not to go. I yanked my arm away and loudly told him not to touch me. The whole cafe was staring at this point. I left quickly, shaken by the encounter. Over the next few days, Mark bombarded me with calls, texts, and emails. He left long voicemails alternating between apologies and declarations of love. He sent flowers to my work with cards promising to make things right. He even contacted my parents trying to get them to convince me to take him back. I blocked his number and told my workplace not to accept any more deliveries from him. I thought that would be the end of it, but Mark's behavior only escalated. He started showing up at places he knew I frequented, my favorite coffee shop, the park where I walk buddy, even outside my yoga studio. Each time I saw him, my anxiety spiked. I started changing my routines, always looking over my shoulder. It felt like I couldn't relax anywhere. My friends noticed how jumpy I had become and urged me to take legal action. The final straw came when I arrived home one evening to find Mark sitting on my front steps. He had been waiting there for hours, hoping to catch me. Seeing him at my home, my safe space, filled me with fear and anger. I immediately called the police. When they arrived, they gave Mark a stern warning about trespassing and harassment. After that incident, I went to the courthouse and filed for a restraining order. I felt guilty taking such a drastic step, but I knew I needed to protect myself. The judge granted a temporary order right away given Mark's escalating behavior. I have a hearing scheduled next month to make it permanent. This whole experience has been emotionally draining. It's brought up a lot of the pain and trauma from when Mark first left. But it's also reinforced that I made the right decision in moving on from him. His actions have shown me that he still doesn't respect my boundaries or wishes. I'm grateful for my support system that has helped me stay strong through all of this. Emma has been checking in on me daily and even offered to let me stay with her if I don't feel safe at home. My parents have been a constant source of support, reminding me that I deserve better than how Mark is treating me. I'm focusing now on healing from this renewed trauma and protecting my peace. I've started seeing my therapist again to process everything. We're working on strategies to help me feel safe and regain my sense of independence. I'm also looking into moving to a new place where Mark doesn't know the address. It breaks my heart to think about leaving my condo that I've made my own, but I need to prioritize my safety and peace of mind. Buddy and I have started looking at apartments in a different part of town. Thank you again to everyone who offered advice and support. It really helped give me the strength to stand firm in my decision. I'll post another update after the restraining order hearing if there are any significant developments. Update 2. Hello everyone! I wanted to provide one last update on my situation with Mark. A lot has happened since my last post, and I'm still processing it all. The hearing for the permanent restraining order was last week. I was incredibly nervous about seeing Mark in court. The days leading up to the hearing were filled with anxiety. I had trouble sleeping and couldn't focus at work. My lawyer reassured me that I wouldn't have to interact with Mark directly, but the thought of being in the same room as him made my stomach turn. When we arrived at the courthouse, I was surprised to see that Mark didn't show up. My lawyer said this sometimes happens. The person realizes they don't have a case and decides not to contest the order. The judge reviewed the evidence of Mark's harassment, including the police report from when he was at my house, and granted the permanent order without hesitation. I felt an immense sense of relief walking out of the courthouse. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe easier. I treated myself to lunch at my favorite cafe to celebrate, something I hadn't felt comfortable doing lately for fear of running into Mark. However, that relief was short-lived. The very next day, I received a call from Mark's sister, Jenny. She and I had been close when Mark and I were married. We used to have weekly sister nights where we'd drink wine and watch terrible reality TV shows together. I hadn't heard from her since Mark left me, so seeing her name pop up on my phone was a shock. Jenny was hysterical on the phone, saying Mark had been in a car accident and was in the hospital. Apparently, he had been driving erratically and crashed into a tree. Jenny said he had a concussion and some broken ribs but was stable. Then she dropped a bombshell. Mark had been drinking heavily and they found a suicide note in the car. Jenny begged me to come to the hospital, saying Mark was asking for me. She said he was distraught about the restraining order and kept saying he had nothing left to live for. I felt a whirlwind of emotions. Concern for Mark's well-being, anger that he would put his family through this, guilt wondering if I had pushed him to this point by getting the restraining order. I told Jenny I needed some time to think and would call her back. I immediately called my therapist and we had an emergency session. She helped me work through my feelings and reminded me that I wasn't responsible for Mark's actions. She advised against going to the hospital, saying it could undo all the progress I've made in setting boundaries. After a lot of soul-searching, I decided not to go to the hospital. I called Jenny back and told her I was sorry to hear about the accident, but that it wasn't appropriate for me to be involved. I suggested she look into getting Mark some professional help once he was released from the hospital. A few days later, Jenny called again. She told me Mark had been released from the hospital but was in bad shape mentally. He was talking about hurting himself and blaming me for ruining his life by getting the restraining order. Jenny asked if I would consider dropping it so Mark could contact me again. She said she was afraid of what he might do if he couldn't reach out to me. I felt terrible. but I firmly told Jenny that I would not be dropping the order under any circumstances. I explained that Mark's mental health was not my responsibility, and that he needed professional help that I couldn't provide. I suggested she look into having him involuntarily committed if she truly feared for his safety. Jenny got angry at this point, saying I was being selfish and that if anything happened to Mark, it would be my fault. I stood my ground, but the conversation left me shaken. I spent the rest of the day second-guessing my decision and wondering if I was doing the right thing. I reached out to my parents and Emma for support. They reassured me that I was making the right choice in maintaining my boundaries. Emma reminded me of all the progress I've made and how much healthier and happier I've been since setting firm limits with Mark. My dad even offered to call Jenny himself to tell her to stop pressuring me, but I declined. Since then, I haven't heard anything more from Mark or his family. I'm trying to move forward with my life and not let this situation consume me. It's been challenging. I still have moments of doubt and guilt, but I'm working hard in therapy to process these feelings and remind myself that I'm not responsible for Mark's choices. I've thrown myself into a home renovation project as a positive distraction. I decided to stay in my condo after all, and am focusing on making it feel even more like my own space. I've repainted the living room, bought some new furniture, and am learning how to do basic repairs myself. It feels empowering to take control of my environment like this. My friends have been amazing through all of this. Emma and I have a standing weekly dinner date where we cook together and catch up. It's become a highlight of my week and helps me feel less alone. My other friends have been checking in regularly and helping me stay busy with group outings and activities. I've also started volunteering at a local animal shelter. Spending time with the dogs there reminds me of the early days with Buddy and brings me a lot of joy. It feels good to be making a difference in these animals' lives, and it's helping me focus on something positive. Work has been a bit of a struggle. My concentration isn't great, and I've had to take more sick days than usual to deal with the stress of everything. I finally opened up to my boss about what's been going on. She was incredibly understanding and has worked with me to adjust some of my deadlines and responsibilities while I get back on my feet. As for my love life, I'm still taking things very slow. I've been on a few casual dates, but I'm not ready for anything serious yet. I'm focusing on rebuilding my trust in myself and my own judgment before I try to trust someone else in a relationship again. Buddy has been my constant companion through all of this. His unconditional love and goofy antics never failed to bring a smile to my face, even on my toughest days. We've been going on lots of long walks and hikes, which help clear my head and remind me of the simple joys in life. I know this isn't the happiest ending, but I'm proud of myself for maintaining my boundaries and prioritizing my own well-being. This experience has shown me how strong I can be, even in the face of intense pressure and guilt. I'm hopeful that with time, the anxiety and stress from this situation will fade and I'll be able to fully move on with my life. Thank you all again for your support throughout this journey. Your advice and encouragement have meant more than you know. I truly appreciate this community and the strength it's given me to stand firm in my decisions. While I don't plan on posting any more updates, please know that your kindness has made a real difference in my life.